We're good.
How's it going, bro?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Enter the Ring Live for Sunday, November the 14th, 2021. After a glorious weekend of boxing, the United States and abroad.
Yep.
What's going on, AJ?
Oh, man, still feeling the effects of last night, man, in that fight, man. What a great fight.
This show is officially being sponsored by Mr. Jaime Munguia.
Jaime Munguia.
Kidding.
It feels good to sometimes, it feels like vindication, when you've been preaching something for so long and nobody wants to listen and everybody wants to turn against you, and then all of a sudden everything kind of turns out the way you want it.
Yes, sir. I know we're chomping at the bit to talk about, obviously, the main event took place yesterday at the Arrowhead, the Honda Center in Anaheim. I keep saying Arrowhead, the pond. It's not the pond anymore. The Honda Center in Anaheim. But I think we're going to do first is we're going to talk a little bit about the fights that took place in Phoenix last night on Showtime. The return of David and Jose Benavidez, the Benavidez brothers. Jose, obviously the older brother. I guess we could talk about him really quick. I got to be honest, I did not get a chance to watch that fight. I was at the Munguia fight last night, so I was only able to catch some highlights of that fight. So you saw the fight, AJ. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you saw in that fight?
Yeah, so it was the return of Jose Benavidez, obviously the older brother of David Benavidez. He came in. It's been close to 3 years since his layoff, since his defeat to Terrence Crawford in a bout that I thought he was highly competitive in. Make it real brief. He took on a really tough guy in his comeback, in Francisco Emmanuel Torres, and he was also fighting at 154 pounds, the highest weight he's ever fought at before.
Yeah.
Against Torres, who's a natural 154 pounder. Benavidez just couldn't seem to really get his engine running. Don't get me wrong, the power's there. The technique's there. You start to see little glimpses of Benavidez towards the end of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly feel that Torres did enough to win the fight, but his retreat mode offense didn't favor well with the judges in Phoenix.
Especially in Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, especially, where, they're appointed sons in the Benavidez brothers, but ended up being considered a draw, which is not a bad thing for either fighter. Definitely Jose will probably be going back down to 147. Like I said, he looks strong, but no problem. The biggest concern I had was they asked the right question. How was the leg? He said the leg was fine. So we'll see what goes on from there. So
yeah, you're right. And it was the highest weight he's fought at, ever, coming down. When I first saw that he was coming back and I saw him in training, I mean, he looked like a light heavyweight, but that's to be expected when you're offered 3 years,
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you say this? This was a good fight for him to knock some rust off. You want to give him a pass? Maybe. I mean, he didn't go out there and embarrass himself.
It was against a quality guy. It's not like he came in and fought some local guy that really didn't have a chance. I mean, this is a guy. Yeah. The Benavidez brothers have proved time and time again that they're willing to take on whoever is up to the challenge.
True. So let's go ahead and jump to his bigger brother, David Benavidez, wins his fight. A late step. Well, I want to say it's a late substitute, but
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. That's not exactly, in the bigger scheme of things, it's not exactly that the guy was just called in, within a week. So he fought a guy in Chiron, or I think that's how I say it, Chiron Davis. He ends up winning by 7th round TKO. I mean, offensively, David's pretty impressive. Defensively, I still think he gets, he maybe allows himself to be hit a little bit too much. But I think it's a matter of once he realizes that guy really can't hurt him, he's willing to kind of just take those shots to give his shots.
Yeah, that's what happened with Chiron Davis. And no disrespect to Chiron Davis. I got to say, man, Amazing young,
tough, yeah.
amazing young man, humble, came in there and fought to bitter and never gave up. It was actually his corner that threw in the towel.
Yeah.
And Chiron usually fights at 154. For people that don't know, he went to a 12-round draw in a fight that I thought he won against Anthony Jarrell in his last fight. So had a little bit of time off, comes back, takes his fight on short notice and stuff, gets the call, steps up to 168 against a monster like Benavidez. I showed you the type of fighter and the character that Chiron Davis is. In the 6th round, his trainer, was like a second father to him, told him, he's all, I'm going to stop the fight. If I don't see you doing something, I'm going to stop the fight. Chiron immediately blasts off of his stool and I'm sorry, this was at the end of the 5th round, going into the 6th, the 4th round, going into the 5th, I'm sorry. And just puts it on Benavidez, fighting him toe to toe. I mean, mouth and back and forth, jaw on Benavidez. But at the end of the fight, you can see the mutual respect between the two. Chiron gave a huge shout out to the city of Phoenix and stuff. And, you got to take your hat off. And you got to, hopefully Chiron's going to go back down to 154 like he said he's going to and stuff. And he's a guy that could be a legitimate threat at 154. A tough guy.
Yeah. So David Benavidez, I mean, obviously, I've been saying it. I said it in our last week's show. I'm going to say it again right now. I like David Benavidez. Offensively, he's exciting. There's really nobody else at 168 that Canelo Alvarez should legitimately consider for his next fight. If he wants to get Benavidez while Benavidez is young still and with only 20-something fights and he's still relatively young, now's the time to make that fight. I still don't like to talk about, I even saw something today to talk about Benavidez maybe fighting Charlo or a rematch with Durrell, who he beat earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. Much like I don't agree with Chon Zepeda having to fight anybody else. He's earned his shot. He never lost his title in the ring. He's undefeated. He lost on a technicality, but he deserves a shot. And now all praise to him if he says, yeah, I'm going to take this shot at Canelo, because he probably can sit around for another year and just fight another top 10, top 20 guy at 168 and wait till maybe the Canelo decides that he wants to maybe vacate, move up to 168. But I think the motivation for David is not just financially. I really think he wants to fight Canelo to see if he really feels confident that he could beat Canelo. He really does. I think he sees Canelo pushing these guys around and these guys fighting with fear. And he says to himself, that's not me. I'm not one of these small guys, feather-fisted guys at 168, a la, Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, or who's the other one? Billy Joe Saunders. I'm not saying Billy Joe Saunders feather-fisted. He's got a decent punch, but none of them have the power of Benavidez.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I think my biggest question mark with Benavidez, don't get me wrong, I think he's an extreme talent, physically strong, physically big for the division. My only question with David Benavidez is his discipline. I still don't think that he was in the greatest of shape. He still has a tendency to kind of do what I call like this bad boy technique where he puts his hands down and just he makes some amateurish mistakes that just kind of make you scratch your head. He did that against Chiron Davis, and taking punches, the punches that he took against Chiron Davis is one thing. Taking those same punches from a fighter like Canelo Alvarez is another thing. Canelo, I noticed that when Benavidez gets frustrated, that's when he really makes mistakes. And I never noticed that before. To me, honestly, I know people are going to say, well, it's had a little bit of time off, but I don't think that this was a stellar performance by David Benavidez in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Going up against a guy that was in it technically 3 weeks. The guy normally fights at 154. When David Benavidez knows that there's no threat, that the guy can't hurt him, he comes in absolutely defenseless. He just comes in and just does his thing. But I just would like to see a little bit more discipline. I'd like to see the fighter that I saw that fought against Jarrell on the undercard of the Porter Spence fight, a guy who uses his jab, used angles and stuff. He didn't do that. He was very flat-footed in this fight. And I thought took some shots that he just didn't need to take,
Yeah. You're right. And like you said, flat-footed, kind of squared up. And yeah. I mean, that's a bad habit to get into no matter who you're fighting.
Yep.
You should always maintain your defense and maintain your boxing, your technique, your stance, whatever.
There was no posturing on his part. It was just kind of standing straight in front of him. And his brother, and it was ironic because his brother Jose was making the same mistake, because the commentators were even questioning, why he was just kind of, what happened to this guy that was, this pop shotter, that was doing these things against Terrence. It just wasn't there.
Yeah.
But his dad, before we move on, his dad in an interview prior to it made a comment that I thought was kind of set the tone. And that was, I could teach my sons, I could show my sons. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to do it. So there's obviously there's obviously an attitude, a disciplinary issue that goes on with the Benavidez brothers in their camp.
Yeah, and then his dad, I had heard several things about his dad, but every interview I've ever seen with Jose Senior, he seems very level-headed and
Very level-headed.
very
Very
level-headed,
level-headed.
and just he's completely Jose Jr. to me is nothing like his dad. Jose Jr. can be a bit of a hothead. I don't see that in Jose Senior. I see him being very, very just very calm, mellow, and just he's kind of like a Sean Porter, like Sean Porter's dad, Kenny Porter. They're doing the
Well,
best with their son, trying to, but
he's
like
a
you
guy that
said,
made a lot of mistakes when he was younger and stuff. He understands that, and he's trying to steer his sons away from the mistakes that he made when he was younger. But for some reason, kids just want to learn the hard way sometimes.
true, yeah, true.
So
Well, look at I would like to see a Benavidez Canelo fight in
oh yeah.
Cinco de Mayo. Canelo does need some time off. I saw actually a good interview with Ray Flores. The guy that the announcer Ray Flores, and I'm not really a huge fan of his per se. I mean, I don't dislike him, but when he's sometimes on the mic, he says some things that are a little questionable to me. But he actually had a very good take on it. He says, I'm impatient and I'm selfish and I want to see this fight. He's all Cinco de Mayo, 2022. He said something very poignant. He said, Canelo's been going at it now. He fought 4 times in 2021. Okay. He's been in training camp. I mean, he fights a fight on Saturday, 2-3 days later, he's right back in the gym. He's going to need this little bit of a break. Right. But come May, when he gives his body a little bit of time to kind of, rest a little bit. I mean, why not make that fight? I mean, I don't think anything really even has to be done prior to that. Or, I mean, for Canelo, no. Maybe David takes another fight early 2021. I mean, on 2022, maybe we're in November, maybe January. If he stays in shape, January, mid-January or February at the latest, and then you got all of March, all of April, and then boom, then you have a big Cinco de Mayo. Mexican American
Something that we
versus
haven't had with
Mexican.
Canelo Alvarez in a while, which would be nice to see that back again. It was kind of a traditionary thing that he was doing back in the day
Yep, yep.
and stuff.
But overall, he didn't really do anything to hurt his standing. I don't know. Remember, sometimes AJ, sometimes you say, if a guy looks too devastating, then they can kind
Yeah.
of go in there and try to be mediocre on purpose. I don't know if that was the case here, but if he went out there and just absolutely devastating, then even more so. And I'm not saying Canelo would shy away from a challenge, but he might say, I don't need this at this time.
There's some battles that just aren't necessary. And the thing is, there's so many ways to sidestep David Benavidez, not just based on the fact that David's inactivity, his questionable things that have happened, but Canelo's had his issues too in boxing, and the things that he was suspected of. Like you said,
Yeah.
again, David is a guy who didn't lose his title in the ring.
Yeah.
It was due to a disciplinary action stuff. So in a chance, you could still kind of look at him like he's a champion, kind of like Tyson Fury with the lineal thing. But I think the biggest issue that David's going to run into is that Canelo likes guys that are going to bring something to the party. And what I mean by that is, you always get those guys that show up that, don't even bring a bag of pretzels or don't even bring a 6-pack of beer. David's one of those guys in a sense, because outside of Phoenix, he really doesn't have a big fan base. I can most guarantee you this fight will not be fought in Phoenix, Arizona. Fought in Mexico, fought in Texas, maybe El Paso, like some of Canelo's fights have been. It's going to draw. Canelo's always going to bring a crowd, but Canelo likes to see a little bit of effort on the other side. And David's numbers haven't been great as far as being able to pull people. Unlike Caleb Plant, who did really well, Billy Joe Saunders, who's got the UK crowd. So that's going to be an issue. So David's going to have to really kind of they're going to have to do some finagling and trying to get something going there. But I would love to see it. I think it would be great for everybody, sports fans and the fighters themselves.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead and jump a little bit out west, and let's just talk about the fight we've been very excited about for a long time. We've been talking about this fight. Took place last night. I was fortunate enough to be there. Fortunate enough to spend a little bit of time with Jaime on Friday after the weigh-in. I was there at the fights yesterday with Robert Alcazar and Renee, and Jaime Munguia wins a 12-round unanimous decision over tough veteran Gabe Rosado. And what, as I went back and watched the fight again this morning, because I wanted to go back and watch with the commentary. Obviously, when you're in the arena, you don't hear the commentary. So I wanted to kind of hear what they were saying. But I was just absolutely utterly impressed with Jaime's defense in this fight. Yes, he got hit a couple of times, but nowhere near what we're used to saying. And Jaime's really not getting enough credit for his defensive improvement over the last couple fights. I mean, he was moving his head. He was throwing 4, 5, 6 punch combinations. I mean, in my opinion, I scored it myself in my head there, like 118 to 110, maybe 117, 111, but that was even a stretch. I thought Jaime comfortably won at least 9 rounds, comfortably, just with sheer output, the harder punches. I saw a couple people saying, well, there was a couple times where Jaime was hurt, and Jaime has the same look on his face whether you hit him or you don't hit him. He was never hurt in this fight, and he'll tell you that he was never hurt in this fight. He just. I mean, he's strong. He's 25 years old. He's strong. He can look like he's about ready to relent, and then he just puts his foot on the gas and comes forward and throws. He was throwing 4, 6, 8 punch combinations.
Yeah,
and not just one time. And his energy level from the first round to the 12th round was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I think from day one, when this fight was first announced, I think Munguia did everything the right way. You know, he's not a guy that, you know, the commentators, guys like Sergio Moore and Chris Mannix, so obviously got issues with Munguia for whatever reason. And I'll talk more about that in a bit, why I think they do. Always talk about how Jaime he doesn't show a lot of emotion. Well, yeah. I never saw where there was a prerequisite where you had to show emotion. Jaime's all business. Even at his young age, he's wiser than his years. In the beginning of the fight, before the fight had even started, Munguia had showed up, and then they were trying to do a spin of controversy how Munguia was supposed to check in at some time, and Rosado was already wrapped and warming up, and Munguia hadn't even got wrapped yet. And you can see a little bit of frustration on Jaime's face at that moment, but everything was okay, because I even called you over at the arena, and I was like, "Hey, Mike, how's everything with the Jaime?" And you were like, "Dude, everything's good." You know, once Jaime got into the fight, you know, it was just one take after another, and the sheer insanity that comes out of, and I'm going to say it straight out, a guy who was very fortunate, with the exception to that show The Contender, if you never got a chance to fight against a handful of mediocre fighters in Sergio, the Latin wannabe snake Mora, you know, this is a guy who since day one he preaches that he's a huge Munguia fan, but he does everything to sway the people that are watching's perception of what they're watching. During the entire fight, Munguia's out there doing things like throwing, you know, 8, 9 punch combinations with sheer accuracy, the volume of punches. You know, they kept talking about how Munguia was getting tired, but then he would go out there and throw 100 and something punches, you know, 50 more than Gabe Rosado. There was never, you know, but when you look at another opponent, a possible opponent with Munguia, you know, in a Charlo, who goes out there and struggles against a Munguia 2-round victim in Montiel, everything is praised against a guy who is so unorthodox. And don't even get me going about Demetrius Andre and Chris Mannix's insanity that Demetrius Andre has uttered the words Jaime Munguia. I don't even think
I don't think he's ever said
the
his
letters
name.
J and M. Believe me, it's just it's insanity. I thought Munguia did an amazing job. Munguia did something I wanted to see him do. We knew that there was going to be dirty tactics with Gabe later on. Munguia never panicked. That's what people don't understand. Go back and watch some of these other fighters, Demetrius Andre, even Gennady Golovkin. Watch guys like Jermell Charlo. When they are facing adversity or any type of illegal tactics, they panic. They start getting crazy. Jaime doesn't panic. He just kind of did what he had to do. If you rough me up, I'm going to rough you up. Rosado came in the tough guy. Munguia proved he was the tougher guy. He stood his ground and did everything he had to do. I mean, the amount of punches, he landed over 400 power punches on Gabe Rosado. Believe me, Rosado could sit there all day and say he wasn't hurt. He's telling a different story right now.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments in that fight where he literally had to grab Munguia to stop the assault. Once in the 4th round, I think again in the 5th or 6th when he tackled Munguia to the ground. That 4th round, go back and watch that 4th round. That literally could be one of the rounds of the year. With it, you know, with the exception of if you want to basically watch a fight where somebody just gets knocked out cold. But that 4th round was what a great round. What a great round, man.
Well, that was you keep seeing guys like, you know, they're always looking for, you know, there was a moment there where Gabe threw that same punch that he threw against, you know, Beck the Bully, and it misses Munguia. And he was like, you know, if that would have landed, you know, it would have been lights out Munguia. I don't understand, because you see, their interpretation of Munguia being hurt is when Munguia gets taken off the track. And what I mean by that, if Munguia's got forward pace and he gets hit with something, maybe he steps aside a little bit, he's hurt. But I don't know too many fighters that get hit by a big shot and come back with a 9-punch combination and dominate the rest of the round. that doesn't sound like a hurt fighter to me.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't see the punch stats, but you're saying they landed over 400 power punches, and that sounds about right. Gabe Rosado, like you said, is definitely feeling the effects of that today. He was complimentary. Gabe was, he did the, the typical, I thought the fight was a lot closer. At no point did he say, I thought I won the fight. He just thought, I thought the cards were closer. I thought it was a tough fight. When it was a tough fight. I mean, nobody ever said Gabe Rosado wasn't a tough fighter. Gabe Rosado's got all my respect. Everybody in that arena that I was there, and that's another thing I want to talk about real quick. But everybody that I've spoken to, from my seat to going to get something to drink, going to the restroom, back and forth, stopping, talking to people I know or people that I recognize, everybody says the same thing, man. They're like, hey, nothing but respect for Rosado, nothing but respect. He's like a warrior, man.
Fans, he came to fight. And it's ironic because I went back and I watched the fight just to kind of refresh my memory. I went back and watched when Rosado fought against Gennady Golovkin because there's talks obviously of Munguia facing Gennady, which I don't think it's going to happen. Myself personally, I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love for it to happen. Rosado was very competitive in that fight. It was a completely different fight, and he fought completely different when he fought against Munguia. He was more of a slugger, just wide open, but even the shots that he hit Gennady Golovkin within that fight were much more devastating than what he landed on Jaime Munguia. If it wasn't for the cuts that he has sustained, the first one being from a clash of heads, and then the second one I think was from a left hook or something. But that's what basically stopped it. It wasn't that he was out on his back or anything like this. Rosado, you don't have to knock Rosado out to win a devastating fight. And I honestly look back at any of the fights. I'm talking about even Rosado's matchups against guys like David Lemieux, obviously his fight against Daniel Jacobs, that was a question, and others. This was the probably the most one-sided beating in a sense, where a guy just never stopped coming, and whatever Rosado put through at him, he just walked over it and still kept coming.
Yeah. Very impressive. Everybody in the arena, and that's what I want to talk about real quick. If we can kind of just shift gears for a second.
Sure.
I talked to a lot of people there. I got there early, and I just wanted to talk to people about their perceptions of Munguia. And I'm going to tell you something right now, man. Just like there may have been during the Barrera Morales days, right? When Barrera was considered the more, I'm from Mexico City, I'm a little bit higher class, blah, 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 and then, the insults that were flying back, and then Barrera insulting Morales, calling him a norteño, from TJ. He called him at one point, I think he called him like an Indian or something, just something like a derogatory term. The Munguia crowd, man, is how do I say this? Just be respectful. It was a little bit rough. There were no incidents yesterday, but it was a little bit rough. They went through a lot of beer last night. Let's put it that way. And everybody that I talked to, right? Well, let's say at least 7 out of every 10 people I was talking to are diehard Munguia fans, and they hate Canelo Alvarez.
Oh, absolutely.
I hate that mother effer. He's a cherry picker. He just blah, 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 blah. He needs to fight Benavidez. I mean, and they're giving him the business. Mm-hmm. And the subject really never came up with Munguia against Canelo, but look at these are the same fan base. These are Mexicans, Mexican Americans that love boxing, and these guys are little by little jumping on the Munguia bandwagon. There was a little bit of a hiccup a couple of fights ago when he didn't look all that great. That was primarily due to the weight struggles. But I'm telling you, man, they announced the crowd last night. It was about 8,000. The entire lower bowl was almost sold out. And then the middle section was pretty full. The top section was pretty empty, but that's a 17,000 seat arena.
Well, that's basically the attendance of Terrence Crawford and Jamel, both Charlo brothers combined for one fight.
And there were a lot of fighters there. Jojo Diaz was there. I know Zerto Ramirez was there. There was a lot of people, a lot of celebrities in the house. Paulie Malignaggi, I guess, was there. Jaime's, like I said, Jaime's getting, and he's not looking for it. He's not looking for the fanfare. And if you see Jaime, if you talk to Jaime spends very little time doing interviews. I think that's something that I don't think he's ever liked ever since he was training here. He doesn't like to be braggadocious. He doesn't want to say the wrong things or be disrespectful. Very, very limited in interviews. Whereas guys like Canelo and these other fighters they just can't wait to get their face in front of the camera and just spout off a bunch of nonsense. He's not really into that. He did a couple little interviews right after, very brief. He was giving people like a minute and a half. And it's like, I'm on to, my obligations. I got the press conference to do. I got this, I got that. I know they had a big post-fight party yesterday over at this restaurant. I think it was in Brea this guy. I got to tell you about this guy that I didn't know who he was, but I met him on Friday at the weigh-in, and then I saw him again yesterday. He's he owns a couple of restaurants here. His name is Mr. Tempo. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a Mexican kid. Well, I mean, I say kid. He was born in Mexico, but raised in Southern California. He's one of these YouTube guys. Nice guy. He was wearing the red cowboy hat. The guy in the ring with the red cowboy hat.
Okay, yeah.
Google the guy. The guy's got a net worth of like $75 million, and he's big Team Munguia. And like I said, Jaime's getting some. He's getting some people behind him, man, because they recognize the kind of fighter he is.
Well, I told you I saw a video where it showed Jaime, and it looked like he was going into it looked like a hotel or something like that, but it was in Mexico. And the guy who was talking with him, getting some, thing, all of a sudden a couple people saw it, and it just turned into like a Manas situation. But I think the big issue that you're going to see right now that Canelo Alvarez has, you see, Canelo knows that he's laid his groundwork down as far as what he wants to be remembered for. But I'm going to tell you this right now. The pound for pound best title in boxing means absolutely nothing to Canelo Alvarez. He wants one title only. He wants to be known as the best Mexican fighter of all time. That is something that is very personal to them. Jaime Munguia is a threat to that, being the fact that Jaime Munguia is from what they consider, a little bit, lower in economic, status, with Tijuana. Tijuana and Guadalajara have always had rivalries, whether it be on the soccer field, in the boxing ring, and other things. But for Canelo Alvarez to lose a fight to Jaime Munguia is passing the torch that whatever Canelo did, he's not going to get that. He won't even be able to enjoy it for a few years until another person comes up and tries to surpass what he's achieved. So I think Canelo is going to do everything he can until his hand is forced. And I think it's getting closer and closer, because let's be honest, whether or not the Benavidez fights happens or not, the real one is when you face a champion versus a champion, and you got Mexico against Guadalajara on Cinco de Mayo. You can't make it any bigger than that. And when you got an undefeated guy in a Jaime Munguia, the young lion, going up against, the older lion, more experienced, but the one who proclaims himself as being the best. Yeah. This isn't just about their titles or win and loss. This is about supremacy, Guadalajara and Tijuana.
Yeah, and I want to say another thing about Jaime's fight last night. Something that I was, and like you said, we've been chomping at the bit, and I've been eager to get this off my chest because I've been hearing it for a long time now. Jaime was called a weight bully for the last couple of years, right? Weight bully, too big. He's fighting these smaller guys, blah, blah, blah. He fought Saddam Ali, was too small. Patrick Alate was too small, blah, 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 all these things. But what does he do? He brought an experienced vet who was coming off one of the biggest wins of his career. And what I thought was an undeserved loss to Daniel Jacobs. Yeah. He brought a guy down from 168. So I don't want to hear no more of this nonsense. Well, Jaime's a weight bully, because he fought a guy that was his size, right? Jaime might have been just a half inch taller than him, but if you were there and you saw him the weigh-in, Gabe Rosado is physically a thick, strong athlete. He is all of 168. Big. Yeah. Or 160. So this whole thing, well, Jaime's a weight bully. They can't say that anymore. And I want people that have been saying it, they need to retract that. And they go, well, maybe he's not a weight bully. He can look that way against a seasoned guy. In fact, I think he looked better against a bigger guy, right? Not as an elusive kind of guy,
Well, when he's fighting a bigger guy, in a sense, Jaime's able to you'll see him use his more of his boxing skill, his jab and the angles that he uses and stuff like he did against Rosado. He did exactly what he had to do. They talked about Rosado pushing Jaime back, but in order for Rosado to push Jaime back, he had to walk through the minefield of those bombs that were coming at him and those jabs. That jab, I didn't get a chance to really talk about it to you.
The jab to the body.
Worked on that jab. No, I'm talking about the jab to the face. There was a couple times where it literally looked like it took Rosado off of his feet. It's a piston. I mean, it's getting better and better and better. And then, of course, there's talks. So where does Jaime go from here? Who do we want to see? If I honestly had my choice and where I would want to see Munguia go after for a title, which I think honestly is easy pickings for him, and people can maybe shun me and say you're an idiot, you're crazy. But I look at Demetrius Boo Boo Andre. Going back and even watching some of his early fights when he got dropped by Vanis Martirosyan, who one fight later got, a couple years later got to fight, Gennady Golovkin and stuff. You watch his style, even in his win against that they thought was so good against, Liam Williams, a guy, who hadn't fought in a year, He drops the guy in the second round. That doesn't do anything. The guy actually hurts Andre 2 times during the fight. But it's that unorthodox, that amateurish, the way he throws punches and leaves himself wide open. Gabe Rosado was very well schooled by Freddie Roach. He kept his hands up. Everything was nice and tight. And if Munguia was able to land at pinpoint accuracy, those kind of bombs we were going through. What happens when you got a guy here that's leaving himself out to dry in Andre?
And Andre tires too. Mid rounds, he fades bad, and then he gets the second win. And I think those mid rounds is when I think Jaime will just put his foot on the gas and get him out of there.
Well, I mean he's a guy that I think holds that same stigma as Terrence Crawford, where they've built this guy up into this impenetrable force that I just don't see. Because if you go back and look at Demetrius Andre's resume, you want to talk about Terrence Crawford's resume? Go back and look at Demetrius Andre, who he's fought. It's absolutely pathetic.
Yeah,
who he's fought.
And the guy he's fighting next, I'm not calling Quigley pathetic, but this guy in no way, in my opinion, even deserves a title shot. Demetrius Andre
didn't win his last fight. He got beat by Shane Mosley Jr. I'm not talking about Senior, who won multiple titles. I'm talking about his son that was working at Burger King. Let's be honest here. Quigley doesn't deserve this shot. Andre's biggest victory on his record is a squeaker over Selecki. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, Andre really is. I mean, but I mean, I don't know. He's with Matchroom, right? So that's Eddie Hearn's one. That's his one tentacle into
doing
that
no
division.
justice because he's not doing nothing.
No,
and to have him out there, honestly, to even, I want to see somebody. So you can go to Enter the Ring show at gmail.com, or you can go to our website at entertheringlive.com. Send us a comment, send us a video. I want to see where Demetrius Andre called out Jaime Munguia. I want to see those words coming out of his mouth, not from a trainer, not from a fan. I want to see him come out of his mouth because I don't believe it exists.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I mean, it may be out there somewhere, or he might have mentioned his name in jest, but never where he says that. Like Gabe Rosado won his last fight and says, "Hey, I want Munguia." Munguia was happy to oblige. Andre, that's an easy fight for Jaime. That's an easier fight than he had last night.
Yeah,
bet the house on that one because that's a guaranteed victory for Munguia. Demetrius knows it. Eddie Hearn knows it. That's why that fight won't get made. I'm hearing rumblings now that Munguia might fight Derevyanchenko next.
Well, he was supposed to fight Derevyanchenko, remember?
Yeah.
And then something happened, but Derevyanchenko's got a fight coming up. So he's got to get past his fight.
Yeah. But, the sky's the limit for Munguia. I mean, there's, the Charlos is a champion at 160, owns multiple belts. There's still some good guys at 160s that, another fight he could take before that crack at the title. I saw a lot of people on social media talking about, well, Jaime's been the mandatory for over a year, not 2 years. He doesn't want to fight for the title. It's like, no, he wants to fight for the title, but just because you're the mandatory doesn't mean you get a title shot. Look at Dillian White and look at Chon Cepeda. Those guys have been the mandatory for 2 years and they're not getting shots.
No, yeah.
They're finally going to get their shot. But
it's ironic, what you were saying, bro, because it's true. The state of boxing, and these sanctioning bodies and how they're doing this kind of stuff. But I think one of the big things is that Jaime's eventually going to get this shot, whether or not it's against Gennady Golovkin, against Jamal Charlo, or against Demetrius Andre, is yet to be seen. But I think either one of those guys. But I'm going to tell you right now, I think I think that Sergey Derevyanchenko is a good matchup for Munguia. I'm going to tell you why. Sergey Derevyanchenko moves like Canelo. He throws pinpoint accuracy. He throws punches and bunches. Mm-hmm. It's a good measuring stick. If Munguia goes in there and completely dominates Derevyanchenko and puts him away with ease, that's pretty much. I'm not saying Derevyanchenko is Canelo, but it's the right direction as far as the right opponent getting yourself prepared for what the end result wants to be.
Yeah, looks like Eric joined us really quick, briefly. Hey, Eric, what's going on?
Yeah.
Hey, little brother, how you doing? I'm here with one of my amazing nieces, Zay, my beautiful.
Hi, Zayra.
Hi, Clardy.
Hey,
where are you guys at?
We're having a beer.
Where?
Bar, called the Low Road, I believe it's called.
I'll take the high road.
What was that?
I'll take the high road.
Cool.
You guys we're here at the Low Road with Rosado. Anyway, just kidding. Just kidding. We're having a good time. And
cool.
It's nice to get to spend some time with my niece. It's pretty awesome.
That's good,
Eric,
man.
Thank you. Eric, real quick before we let you go, give us your quick take on your impression of Jaime's victory last night.
Jaime Munguia, the champion. I mean, I had it scored 119-109. even then I was kind of like, Rosado maybe, because he did something at the end of one of the rounds. I figured he might have
yeah.
one round. But Jaime, you did an amazing job. Very, very impressive. He looked like he might have got a little gassed there, but his actual work, I mean, his face looked like he was gassed a little.
He always looks that way.
It always looks that way.
I know, but his work rate did not cease.
It never wavered. Yeah.
It never wavered. It never wavered. And he just kept going and going and going. So, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, he's the top of his division, period. And Andrade or Charlo or whoever else wants to try and take him out, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
The Mexican champion, full champion.
It's
So,
funny.
very
It's funny.
soon,
It's
yeah.
funny you said that thing about Jaime. How me and Mike would talk about that, about the fact that people keep trying to say that he's gassed, but yet he's going in there and he's throwing all these multiple combinations, and his work rate is just superior to a lot of other people's. I remember a long time ago, Johnny showed me this picture of Jaime, and he'd asked Jaime a question. He took a picture, and Jaime had done this. He had this look like this, or he's like this. So every time he would do like this, he would kept showing to me. I was like, this is when when you ask Jaime a question, he's not really listening to you, and Jaime just had this look.
Yeah, he had that during the face-off before they touched gloves for the start of the first round.
Yeah,
he starts
he looks off to the side.
Yeah. He was kind of like, it's time to fight. Oh, okay.
Exactly. And the thing was, I'm going to tell you what the thing was. Gabe Rosado had to sell himself and get himself physically ready. That's why he worked up such a sweat going into there, jumping around. I mean, you would think that it was a WWE championship match. Munguia comes walking in like he just got off the chair, maybe went to the bathroom, giving high fives to people, hugging out, a big smile on his face, gets in there and just takes care of business.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you guys a question. So, so we have the fight December 29th, Triple G versus Murata. What if Murata pulls that fight out? You think he'd be willing to come across the pond and fight Munguia?
No.
You think they'll just make it? You think they'll make him?
The worst thing that could happen to boxing right now is Murata winning that fight, especially since it's in Japan. That title is going back to Japan, and it's not going to leave for a while. Okay, unless there's an extreme amount of money, Murata is going to want to hold on to that. He doesn't want to make the same mistake he made last time. So I mean, it's a situation where Murata, he showed what he did in his fight against Lamont Kirkland. Okay. Blasted him, just came right off the stool and did that.
Oh, you mean James Kirkland?
James Kirkland, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what he's got to do against Gennady. Gennady's a notorious slow starter. Jump this guy at his accelerated age. That's his best shot, because the longer the rounds go, Gennady's only going to get warmed up. He's going to pick the guy apart.
But you're saying, though, if Murata wins that fight, he's going to take that title hostage.
Title's going hostage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm having a really hard time hearing out here.
That's
So
all right,
we're
bro.
probably we're gonna get out of here. But
Okay.
I just wanted to, if Jaime's watching this tonight, great job.
I doubt
man.
it.
Keep up the good work, and just Eric the Red's rooting for you, buddy. And brothers, I love you. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay?
All right, bro.
I'll see you next week. I'll actually see you on Wednesday or
All right, bro.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
You said, brother.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Zay.
Hold on. How do I get out of it?
Hold on. We can still hear you. Eric has some good takes, and he's excited about Jaime. I mean, what's not to be excited about, right? With Jaime, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he just continues to get better, and the sky's the limit. And here's a guy that's got 38 wins, and he's only 25 years old.
I think the thing that and this is gonna talk about a lot of fighters. The thing that's impressive about Jaime, everybody always talks about people being humble and stuff, and almost apologetic sometimes when they do something really good. Jaime's one of those guys that you almost feel like when he has such an accomplishment, it's almost like he feels bad that he did it, in a sense. You know what I mean? But the point I'm trying to make is that anybody I see, Munguia doesn't fit that mold. This is what I was going to talk about with Sergio Mora and Chris Mannix, why I think they have such a disdain for Munguia. Let's be honest. Canelo Alvarez is the pound for pound #1 fighter in the world. No matter what anybody wants to say, that's the way it is. People have an issue with Chicano fighters being that because they tend to be a bit boisterous. And unfortunately, African-American fighters, when they got a fighter like Crawford, they can't win that argument when you got a fighter of the level and the superiority that Canelo's holding right now. So the last thing they want to see is another guy come up, especially a guy Munguia, once again, like Canelo, a young guy who comes up, who's going to end up holding that spot possibly for a long time. Sergio Mora is one of those ones too. He's got his own issues because he's never been accepted by the Mexicans, by the Chicanos, as a true Mexican fighter. It's something totally different. It's one thing to be born in East LA. It's another thing to be born in Tijuana. Believe me, they look at you completely different. But the thing I want to say is that Munguia is always going to be that person. He doesn't have that personality that Canelo has. He's not going to be a kind of guy that's going to be boisterous or talking. But there's one thing about Munguia. When he says something, he absolutely means it. So if you ask Munguia, do you want Triple G? And he gives you that look and he goes, yeah. He's not lying. He's not talking shit. He's like, hey, let's do it. I don't have to talk. I mean, who do you want me to fight? I'll fight anybody. And that's a rarity in boxing. You don't see that too much.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, he will step up and fight anybody. I know that, man. And like I said, I think you and me together combined, I mean, I think for most of the guys out there, we have a little bit more of an insight because of the years that he was here and watching him train and getting to know him on a personal level. We just know the kid will fight anybody. And that's true for most boxers, but he's a kid that'll fight anybody that, like I said, 38-0 now, 30 knockouts. His resume is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And, you know, I'm excited, man. I can't wait till his next fight.
Yeah, he's always going to be one of those fighters that are always going to try to find an excuse for whatever and stuff like this. But there was something I told my wife this morning. I said, people forget that Munguia, when he was offered an opportunity to fight against Triple G, he jumped at it. Being the fighter of the year that he was, you know, the Reebok Magazine Prospect of the Year, 21-year-old kid, never been on the stage before, accepted it. For some reason, he was deemed, you know, not a quality opponent for whatever reason. He was then given an opportunity against Saddam Ali. He goes in there. Everybody knows what happens. He destroys Saddam Ali, wins a 154-pound title. They call him a weight bully, so now he moves up to 160. Triple G had his opportunity to take on a 21-year-old novice, upcoming young Munguia. This version of Munguia at 25 is a completely different monster than what it was back when he was 21. So that's why I don't see. Now, I'm not saying Triple G. I never use the word scared. Nobody's scared of anything. But like you said, sometimes there's opportunities that are across the street that you just don't need if you can find an easier one up the street. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I don't know. So we got started a little bit late today. We can go, obviously we're going to go over a little bit today, but let's talk about, let's go ahead and talk about this weekend's fight coming up. Okay. I mean, obviously we have some local fights that we're going to be attending in Arizona, but the big fight coming up. And I texted you guys earlier today. I was watching some recent training footage of Sean Porter, actually from like today or yesterday. And man, Porter looks really, really good. Porter looks really, really good. And I'm telling you right now, I think Terrence Crawford, if Terrence Crawford is just going through the motions, just another camp, business as usual, he is in for a rude awakening because Sean Porter is doing some pretty experimental type things that are, I really am expecting a huge effort from Terrence Crawford. I'm sorry, from Sean Porter in this fight against Terrence Crawford.
I absolutely agree with it. I was watching some of that video and I've been following both fighters. There's not a whole lot of video out there of what Terrence Crawford's been doing. Everybody talks about how he's got this second to none workout regimen. Listen, I don't care if you could do jumping jacks for 3 hours. I don't care if you can go run 20 miles in a day. That doesn't matter. How are you preparing? Because based on what I'm seeing, what Terrence Crawford's doing, he's thinking it's business as usual. So whatever I did against Benavidez, Cavalucas, against Horn is going to work against Sean Porter. I've said this time and time again. Sean Porter's going to bring something different to this dance than Terrence has seen. I actually didn't agree. One of the worst interviews I saw with Paulie Malignaggi, where he actually said that he equated Sean Porter to how Crawford was able to contain the overall strength of Jeff Horn. Let me see something right now. You can't confuse Jeff Horn and his lack of boxing ability, his rugby mentality, to what Sean Porter does. Sean Porter to me is a running back. Okay. That's like saying a running back and a linebacker. Let me tell you the difference. You can have a running back and a linebacker running at each other. Linebackers practice tackling more than running backs do. Yeah. Running backs practice juking. How to
getting away, how to avoid the tackle. Yeah.
Watch Sean Porter's feet when he's doing those hip hops, when he's those little feint hops. Okay. I'm going to tell you why he's doing that. Go back and watch the Jose Benavidez fight against Terrence Crawford. Jose would do this thing where he would stomp his foot out, and the foot hand that he looked like he was going to lead with, he'd pull it back to the last second, come in with the other one. That's where he was successful against Crawford. He's going to have Terrence guessing with this bouncy, stomp the ground, this kind of stuff. It's a great tactic. It'll work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I love the fact that he's been working on his right coming over the top, which is absolutely beautiful. That's how you're going to get him. Also, believe me, what Sean Porter is showing and Kenny Porter is showing is only selective, and it might be there just to kind of make Terrence think, well, this is what they're working on, and you'll never see it in the fight because it's a completely different game plan. They're doing a lot of hard work, and I commend them. Whatever happens in this fight, you got to say Sean's doing it the right way. He's a guy who's coming and saying, listen, I understand this is my last opportunity to get over this little hill that is, kind of pushed me down every time. What happened with him with so many fighters. He's beat a lot of great fighters. I mean, like I said, the fight that was close, was tooth and nails with Errol Spence, with Keith Thurman.
Yeah, true.
I think Sean has a legitimate chance to win this fight. I don't know why anybody is so sold on Terrence Crawford now, and I wonder how the boxing world's going to react if for some reason Sean Porter ends Terrence Crawford in easier fashion than what the people think. What is boxing world? What's their perception? And these boxing so-called writers, what happens to their argument about guys like Devin Haney and all these other ones that they kind of
flush it down the toilet?
Exactly. So Terrence has got a lot on his shoulders right now.
It's like David Benavidez in a post-fight interview that I saw today. He said the same thing. He said these guys outright talk about boxing. He said they don't, pardon my French, he says they don't know shit about boxing other than what they watch on TV. He's all they really don't know.
About Charlo. He said Charlo's a bitch. You don't want to even fight me.
Yeah.
And
it's true. It's true. With Sean, what I think Sean's going to do, and like I said, it's going to be a close fight because I think for as tough as Sean is, Sean to me is still not technically as sound as guys like Errol Spence, even guys like Keith Thurman. I think Keith Thurman doesn't get nearly enough credit, but he's physically as tough as any of those guys, if not tougher. But I watched today the replay of the Cavalucas versus Crawford fight. I watched it just about an hour and a half ago. And that was a very, very close fight up until the 7th round. In fact, you could even say Cavalucas was winning the fight. And he caught, not only did he score the knockdown and not get credit for it, but he hit Crawford and rocked him a couple times to where Terrence had to kind of fall forward and grab. That knockdown on Cavalucas, that first one in the 7th round, was right in the back of the head. It was not a legal punch.
Oh, yeah.
It was not a legal punch. It was in the back of the head, and he never recovered from that, right?
Terrence Crawford practices that shot. Watch his video, okay? What he calls touch and go. He comes like he does that every time, bro. It's what he does, But
yeah, it was not a legitimate punch. I mean, it was. I don't know, man. I don't know. For all those people that were giving Boots Ennis the business after that fight with Delorme, saying, "Oh, it was the guys. It was the Crawford fanboys because they know Jaron Ennis is a legitimate threat." At 147,
Terrence Crawford won't fight Jaron Ennis.
Oh no! But what I'm saying is that my argument is that they were screaming that from the rooftops, but were very quiet when Crawford does the same thing. Very, very quiet. Well, and if he tries to do that to Sean Porter, I'm gonna tell you right now, Sean Porter, Kenny's not gonna stand for that. Kenny's gonna probably tell the referee in the meetings before the fight, hey, this dude hits us behind the head. We're gonna hit him behind the head twice. Yep. So we don't want to see no shenanigans. We want a clean, fair fight.
Well, you made a comment just a moment ago about Sean Porter being a little bit, not technically as sound as guys like Errol Spence. I'm going to tell you right now, that's the advantage in this fight. Cavalucas was very unorthodox. Terrence Crawford seems to have an easier time with guys that come in skilled, guys that come in and do everything the right way. He's able to dissect that. It's the guys that come in that don't quite follow the script that gives him so many problems. And if there's anybody in boxing at this level that does it the best, that runs off that script and probably didn't even read the script, that's Sean Porter.
Yeah.
Very true. You really can't look at any 1-2 fights of Sean Porter and say he fought the same. Seriously, go back and he's always something different. So Terrence really doesn't know. I mean, it's like if you're fighting Keith Thurman, you know what to look for. If you're fighting Errol Spence, you know what to look for. Danny Garcia and others. You don't know with Sean Porter.
Did you see that kid that he had? He has that kid up in camp with him up in Mount Charleston, that lefty, that southpaw kid. I don't know who the kid is, but the kid is very reminiscent of Crawford, his style. He emulated it to perfection. We know he's been sparring with guys from Caleb Plant to Anthony Durrell, all the way to Tank Davis.
Tank Davis he's been working with.
Because Tank's got that fight coming up, against Isaac Cruz. So Sean Porter will be ready. Like you said, he pulled out all the stops for this. I think he's fighting for not just Sean Porter. I really think he's fighting for the brand recognition. PBC, he's carrying the PBC on his shoulders right now. And I think it's something that he relishes. He says, pack it all on, guys. I'm ready to do this. I'll carry the load. Sean Porter's the kind of guy in life. Like, if there's a fire breaks out, he's going to be the first one in there to help people out and the last one to leave. He just looks like that kind of guy. So I think
Yeah,
he's ready to carry that torch for the PBC and say, we're going to go after this guy, this top rank. So all this nonsense, this talk about the PBC fighters not wanting to fight this guy. No, that's all. That's just no. That's that's never been the case, guys. And if you know the economics of boxing and what's been happening behind the scenes,
I'm so tired of hearing people talk about this fighter doesn't want to fight. Let me tell you something right now. Sean Porter would never turn away an opportunity. This is a guy who's fought, let's be honest, every single champion in the last 10 to 15 years that's been in the welterweight division has faced Sean Porter. Everyone.
Yeah.
From Ugas to Errol Spence to Keith Thurman to Cal Brook. The thing is, this is your classic good versus evil. Kenny Porter and Sean, they have this religious bond, not just father and son. They answer to a higher calling. Terrence Crawford is like this new song I just did called The Power of One. He only believes in himself because, nobody else got Terrence where he needs to be. And that's going to be his downfall. Because when Terrence gets
pride before the fall, AJ, it's that old adage. There's the pride comes before the fall.
Who's he going to turn to? Bomac? You think Bomac's going to have the answers? You think Bomac's ever going to have the answers to tell Terrence? Terrence ends up pulling himself off the canvas and barely makes it back to the corner. And he looks at Bomac like, what do I do? Bomac's going to be like,
I don't know, man. I'm thinking about the buffet after this.
Run,
I don't know.
I knock this. That's what it's going to be because they've never been in that situation before. And Terrence doesn't listen anyways. He's a very disrespectful person. And Sean hinted it in a lighter form where he said, Terrence has always been the bad guy. Well, he kind of went back and he fixed what he meant. It wasn't he was a bad guy. People were afraid to fight him. He was a bad guy because of his attitude.
Yeah.
How he was. He's always had a bad attitude. And stuff. He was a guy that was very fortunate.
Yeah.
You go back to when he won his title. I mean, come on, who'd he beat? It's a joke.
Yeah, I still go back and watch that footage sometimes when Crawford and Errol Spence ran into each other at that fight, and Errol Spence had the red hoodie on, and he was clowning Terrence. Man, you got rocked by Gamboa. He's like, you got hurt by Gamboa.
Terrence talks a big game,
and there's nothing Terrence could say about that. What was he going to say to Spence? Well, you got hurt by who?
Well, Terrence Crawford said it just the other day. He's like, I'm over Spence. I don't need Spence. Well, technically, you do need Spence but right now. I wouldn't be concentrating on Spence or anybody else. I wouldn't be running my mouth about. He's even running his mouth about Canelo Alvarez. I mean, this guy's a complete idiot. Yeah. I would worry about Sean Porter. Showtime Porter is coming in. I'm telling you now. If Sean follows what him and his dad, because facing adversity, I think Kenny Porter's got Sean's back. Does Bomac have Terrence Crawford's back? Is the big question.
No. They'll throw each other under the bus at the drop of a hat. That's just the way it is. You can see it. They lack character, man. Yep. They lack character.
Well, that's the difference is when I was watching the training camp, you see Sean's in here, not a bunch of people there. Him and Kenny are working. You go to Terrence is doing his pity pat, and he's got all these guys around him doing this stuff like, man, talking shit on Sean Porter while he's sitting here. I'm like, dude,
they're just yes men. What
is this, man? Go take that shit to Trilla, dude. This isn't boxing, man.
Yeah.
And I don't like to pick sides, but like I say, it's good versus evil. I'm going to go with Showtime Sean Porter, and I'm going to go in stunning fashion. I think he ends up stopping Terrence Crawford. I'm going to go and put my thing out there. I think he stops Terrence Crawford the 8th round.
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, he catches him and goes on the attack. I mean, because like you say, we're going to see how Crawford reacts because he's been hurt multiple times. He's been dropped. He got hurt by, like we said, like a very small Yuriorkis Gamboa, right? Who's like a 20-pound lighter version of Sean Porter, compact, strong, tight guard. And I'm telling you, if those guys were equal weights and equal sizes, Gamboa would have beat him.
Well, the difference is too, is when Terrence got dropped by Kabalukas, it was towards the end of the round. So obviously he had a minute to kind of get his head back together.
Yeah.
If Sean Porter drops Terrence Crawford in devastating fashion and early with at least a minute and a half, the fight is over because Sean knows how to finish. He's not like Kabalukas. He's not going to sit here and try to get technical and stuff. He's just throwing bombs and they're coming in volume and he might throw 10. He only needs to land 1. And believe me, 1, maybe 2 are going to land. That's all it is. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, hey, let's just do this really quick since we're going to be, Tuesday's going to be a busy day for us. I know, because I have to pick Eric up at the airport. So I'm not even sure if we're going to be able to have a show on Tuesday. But let's just end this last 5 minutes or so and talk about the big fight on Tuesday. Well, I guess it would be considered about, Wednesday, early, 3:30 in the morning, Tim Zhu. The matter of fact, the press conference is happening right now in Australia.
Yeah.
If you go to their channel, you could,
I got on my thing right now.
Tim Tszyu versus Takashi Inoue, and he's arrived, and he's, true to form, he looks like a goddamn
It
tank.
was phenomenal.
He looks like a goddamn Sherman tank. But Tim Tszyu said it. Tim Tszyu said, muscles don't win fights. It all starts here. And Tim Tszyu looks very, very confident in this fight, almost to the point where I want to kind of tell him, hey Tim, you just don't take this guy lightly. And I don't think he is, but he just seems supremely confident.
Well, that's
like
what
he really is confident in his ability.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what I was going to say. But
not to where he's disrespecting Inoue at all.
No. But the thing is that, and I know this is just media, bullshit out there. It's like this. But I've seen multiple stories about Tim Tszyu talking about this fighter and then Canelo and this fighter, even mentioned Munguia, all these other people. Let me tell you something right now. The only fighter Tim Tszyu, and I know he's only focused on it, is Inoue. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a difficult fight. This is not going to be an easy fight for Tim Tszyu. And anybody that sits here and bullshits themselves and says it's not, this is going to be an eye-opener. This is going to really tell us where Tim Tszyu is at 154 pounds. Inoue obviously is not one of the top guys, but believe me, there's not a single person from the champions down to the rest of the top 10 that would not struggle with this guy. You saw what happened with this bout with Munguia. The guy's always been successful. He's strong. He's not a one-punch knockout guy, but he's a guy who can get you out of there. Tim Tszyu's not a one-punch knockout guy either. They match up really well together. Tim's gonna have to be patient. He's gonna have to just he's gonna get taken out of his game because that's what this guy does. He roughs you up.
He's gonna be made to feel uncomfortable at times in this.
He's got to just reset, catch his breath, reset, and then get back to that precision thing. Get him at the distance, exactly what he did against the young welterweight that came up against him that started to kind of give him a little bit of trouble. Don't start reading your press headlines until you've actually, built a story. This is a huge test for Tim Tszyu, and it's one that he cannot fail. A loss here would throw Tim Tszyu back to Australia, and it's right back to the rebuilding stage to try to come back. He's got to win. I'm not saying he's got to win impressive, but he just got to win. I don't care how he wins. Narrow decision, whatever like this. It's got to be a victory. There is no losing to this guy. You know what I'm saying? Because a loss here,
devastating.
I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say it this way. I'm not saying that this guy can't go in and be successful in a way against Charlo or Castano. I think he has a great shot against Castano with a victory based on the way he fights and the way Castano fights. But unfortunately, in the eyes of the boxing people that run those sanctioning bodies, they're going to say, well, now we've got our excuse not to use Tim Tszyu anymore. Boom. You know what I'm saying? It's a must-win situation. Keep his head, keep his composure. Remember what he was taught stuff. When he gets out of his sink, reset, go right back to business.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I'm excited about that fight. I mean, I'm apprehensive as well. I mean, I've had this feeling the last couple of days, just like the butterflies, because fighters that I really admire, some of my favorite fighters in the world are all fighting. We had Jaime, now we have Tim. A couple of weeks we have Lomachenko. We had Jojo Diaz fighting on December the 4th. I'm super excited about that. We
got guys like Jones and Payton, but I mean, this goes back with Tszyu. This goes back even before Tszyu was even around, and that's with his father, Costas, and our admiration for his father and what his father did in the ring. He was the guy that was looked upon as the evil Russian and all this kind of stuff, and he was the guy that just went in there and just kept destroying all these American superstars.
And he was respectful.
Always respectful. He was cut from a different piece of cloth. Tim is too. But like I said, I mean, one thing Costas, you never saw him out there talking about anybody. Even the disrespect that he got in the face of Julio Cesar Chavez and others. He just went in there and handled Julio Cesar Chavez in probably the most devastating way Chavez has ever been beaten, next to De La Hoya.
Yeah.
Tim Tszyu just has to focus on this fight alone, and understand that this guy is a legitimate threat. This guy is a young guy. He's hungry. And like you said, physically menacing to look at. Tim may not look physically menacing, but believe me, Tim's equally as strong, if not stronger. But
well, that's what he was saying. He says he's going to feel that he's going to feel how strong I am. And we'll see. I know that he admitted and says his upbringing and how hard their dad was on them. He said there were times where they were not allowed food because just the feeling of uncomfortability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do with pit bulls. That's what you do with pit bulls, man. That's how you get the rage out of them, man.
I'm very, very intrigued by this fight. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if Tim goes out there and puts on this devastating performance, the boxing brass, people behind things can no longer call this guy a regional fighter. They just cannot. The boxing public, the fans already are clamoring for it. There's a lot of guys now that are mentioning his name. There's a lot of guys now out there saying this guy is nothing like, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. or any of the guys that have come along after their fathers. This is a guy that legitimately is a world-class fighter, and because it doesn't happen that often where a son reaches a success or ever wins a world title like that. I mean, really Chavez did. I mean, and Chavez looked great when he beat, what was it, Andy Lee?
Andy Lee.
He looked great when he beat Andy Lee and almost beat Sergio Martinez, that last round. But yeah.
But I think that's the difference, though, bro. It's with the upbringing. Some people were brought up, and not to say their fathers were bad fathers, but maybe they spread the rod. Maybe there just wasn't enough discipline. The situation
they lived a charmed life. Yeah.
Tim Tszyu didn't have that.
I don't think
like
so.
Like you said, there was obviously a lot of family things going on, and that's Tim's business. We don't need to sit here and air all that kind of stuff out. But the bottom line is he's carving his own path. And I'm supremely confident he's going to come out on top, and he's going to be a legitimate threat. I see some great matchups. I think, honestly, looking at it more and more, I think that Charlo is an easier mark for Tszyu than Castano. I think Castano, his style is always going to make people uncomfortable. Just the way that he fights and the sheer volume in which he fights with. But I want to tell you real quick that I saw a thing the other day, and they just announced the fight. I don't know if you heard about it or not, but I'm pulling it up real quick. Sebastian Fandora. Did you hear about it?
Fandora, yeah. Who's he fighting?
I gotta say, man, I'm very impressed by this kid, like Tszyu, and I'm gonna tell you why. So,
who's he fighting?
That's what I'm pulling up. I'm telling you right now. I'm pulling it up. Sergio Garcia. So he's fighting Sergio Garcia, the undefeated next big highly touted guy that they're talking about right now. Garcia comes into the fight 33-0.
Damn.
He's a guy that a lot of people are avoiding right now. Sebastian Fandora, without hesitation, took this fight. This is a huge fight for Fandora. Fandora goes in there successful against Sergio Garcia. There's no doubting this guy anymore. There's no calling him this awkward kid. This guy is legitimately putting guys out and stuff. And with that size, I'm gonna say it again, he's an anomaly. It's hard to explain because he doesn't fight like a tall fighter with that stature to fight inside. And this is a huge test. And believe me, I know Garcia's looking at it like, hey, this guy's a live dog.
Yeah, very much so. Let's so we'll go ahead and close it out. I'm getting ready to eat dinner, but okay, don't want to forget everybody to tune in. Like I said, Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, late Tuesday night, whatever time you go to bed. I don't know if you're up for a night owl, stay up and watch the fight. I don't think ESPN Plus has picked it up yet. I think it was talked they might have picked it up, but I don't think that's happened yet. Either way, we'll find a way to watch it, and then that's going to be an exciting fight. And once again, congrats to Jaime Munguia, congrats to David Benavidez. Great fight still coming up, guys. Tszyu. We got the Crawford Porter. Week after that, we got Kambosos Lopez. Week after that, we got Jojo Diaz, Devin Haney. The very next day, who's fighting? Somebody else is fighting on December 5th. We've just got a lot of fights to end this year, man. So let's.
And I agree with you, bro. And I can tell you right now, if I was people, I would keep my eyes glued to the screen because I tell you right now, there's going to be a lot of shocking results coming up in the next.
I think so.
Weeks.
I think so.
All
right, bro.
All right, brother, man.
Good show, man. Have a good night. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the like button, share with your friends. Like AJ said, send us an email, put something in the comments. We'd love to be able to discuss some things with you guys, boxing fans. So
yeah,
what we're here for.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Have a good night.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Night, man. For all of us out here at Enter the Ring, I'm AJ Rage, Mighty Mike. Congratulations, Munguia. Everybody have a